Tonight, Bernie Sanders enters the political race and immediately starts running way to the left of Hillary Clinton. This is going to cause a rift in the party, kind of like we've seen with establishment Republicans dealing with the Tea Party. Then, the first Bridgegate domino is about to fall. David Wildstein is reportedly set to plead guilty to federal charges and cooperate with the feds. How will this impact Chris Christie? Also, Baltimore isn't burning any longer, but tension's still very high, and now protesters are swarming dozens of cities, including New York. Are we going back to the tense times, the 60s, with cities like Newark and Detroit were torn apart by riots? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And yes, we're already breaking out to dramatic music, and we're not even in May. We begin with a race for the White House and some competition from the left for Hillary Clinton.
The major issue is how do we create an economy that works for all of our people rather than a small number of billionaires. And the second issue, directly related, is the fact that as a result of the disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, we now have a political situation where billionaires are literally able to buy elections and candidates.
That is Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. He's an independent, but he calls himself a Democratic socialist, and he's more progressive than Hillary Clinton, a lot more. But it looks like Hillary, for whatever it's worth, is moving to the left, whether it's on her own or in reaction to some of the criticism she's getting from that part of the party. Lately, she's been talking a lot about income inequality, high incarceration rates of black men. And we've seen how the rise of the Tea Party fracture or at least change the Republican Party. And the question is, will Democrats have their own version of that with Bernie Sanders challenging the so-called establishment? Let's bring in our panel right now. Richard Brodsky, definitely part of the establishment, a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos and professor at NYU. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Republican strategist Bill O'Reilly, the good one as we call him, and Andrew Whitman, who spent a lot of quality time with Richard today, our senior political correspondent.
Not the good one.
Not the good one, yes. Okay, I'll start with you, Andrew. Do you think Bernie Sanders' entrance in this is looked at by those in the Hillary camp as a migraine or as something that's actually going to help her? People thought an unopposed primary is never good for anybody.
I suspect that the Hillary camp thinks that Bernie Sanders running for president is actually going to help her for a couple of reasons. One, she will have to go through primaries and debates and events where they're competing on the same podium or at the same event, and that will help sharpen her up and get her ready for the general election campaign. If she had run unopposed, that would have been problematic. I think it also is helpful to Hillary because she is going to have to speak to his issues, and his issues are far more progressive, especially on an economic front. And I think that the Clinton camp will feel like this will help strengthen her bona fides in terms of the progressive economic policy. And that is a weak spot for her with progressives. She and her husband have been very closely connected to Wall Street, and that's a concern for the progressive left.
There's some guys, Dom, who run, and they run on an issue. They just want to get attention to the issue. He knows he's not going to win. Forget what he says. But he's also the kind of guy, I've gotten interviewed a few times, he's not going to go quietly. In fact, he'll use her name, and he'll use her name and attach criticism to it, that she's not really committed progressive and all the rest. We know how the media works, especially in this 21st century. Anything he says, she's going to have to respond to. You sure this is going to be something the Clinton camp can just brush off and say, oh, this is, you know, a lovable crank here, but he's not to be taken seriously?
Honestly, Richard, I don't even know why the senator is wasting his time. It's a complete waste. She's going to, for the most part, Hillary Clinton, completely ignore him. It's been done before. She's going to move a little bit to the left as Democrats and move to the left during the primary. Republicans move to the right. And then for the general election, you move back towards the middle. I don't get it why he's running.
Somebody explain to me this left thing. I heard Bernie Sanders declare for president and say he wants an economy that works for everybody, and he thinks that the Citizens United is a bad decision. Since when did this turn out to be a communist plot?
He calls himself a socialist.
Well, I understand
that's self-identification.
But he's running on a platform that is moderate to a painful extreme.
Okay.
He's moderate.
Well, Richard, I don't know if I agree with that.
Bernie Sanders is moderate?
Wait, yeah.
You listen to what he said.
That's exactly my point.
He said that he wants an economy that works for everybody.
In his interviews.
Here, guys, is what he's talking about. He didn't think that Obamacare went far enough, and he believes there should be universal health care. He wants to increase on the top end percent here the average the income tax rate, and he wants to get it up closer to the 50% rate here. He also wants to expand Social Security. Obviously, he's a major advocate on the labor front here.
This is your idea of Karl Marx?
Well, he, by definition, says we need more income redistribution than we have right now in the country. Okay? I'm not saying...
Let's see what the Republican says, because this is not a guy coming from the far left like the crazy Tea Party guys.
I think if he calls himself a socialist, we could trust that
he does.
He's probably a socialist. Probably. I think, however, that he's a godsend for Hillary Clinton. And the reason, I mean, Hillary's going to do the Clintons, and I'm not calling Hillary a snake, but the Clintons have studied serpentine movements, and they go left and right and left and right.
Good. Good point for Stalin.
And that moves them forward. I mean, they figure that out.
A non-snake serpentine movement?
A non-snake serpentine movement.
Human studies.
However, but Bernie Sanders being in the race is going to help frame Hillary Clinton in the center for the general election. And it's a gift to her, because a lot of voters who are not that ideological either way will say, well, she's no Bernie Sanders. I think it's a gift for her.
Well, look, we've been talking about Elizabeth Warren as being the progressive standard bearer, and we've seen Hillary Clinton adopt some Warren-esque language in some of her stump speeches and in some of her in her initial video. Warren's not running for president. Bernie Sanders is. And Bernie Sanders is fairly close to Elizabeth Warren when it comes to economic issues. And so one way or another, Hillary Clinton's going to have to speak to that wing of the Democratic Party.
I want to get into another political, albeit on the other side. Republicans, and specifically Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, he's getting some big numbers here. Big donors are lining up behind this guy, and he's starting to get the cash. Many people believe the establishment, they love Jeb Bush here, but the standard line is, find me a Republican who says that they're a Jeb Bush guy, and that'll be the first one they'll meet here. I know it's early, but in reading the tea leaves, do you think the establishment could come around to Walker?
Yes.
I mean, he's taken some interesting positions in the past, enough that maybe the guy on our screen could be in some trouble?
Yeah, I mean, Walker is not a naturally talented politician. That's not what he brings to the table. What he brings to the table is a titanium backbone, and that's what Republicans like about him. He's been an executive. He's been tested. He's been under enormous pressure, media pressure, union pressure, and other, and he's stuck to his Republican principles. That's why he's so popular. If you know, the establishment may be Jeb Bush, the money may be Jeb Bush, the big money, but Walker's just underneath that radar, and that's where the average Republican voter is, in my opinion. And they're going to listen to that. They're going to listen. Absolutely, Walker's got a very good path towards the
titanium backbone.
He does.
Is valuable only if it's attached to a brain.
He's got a brain.
Well, you know, he's not stupid, I'll give you that. But his positions are so far to the right. I mean, that the American people in the end are going to view this as a contest of ideas, be it Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, be it Scott Walker or Jeb Bush or one of your right-wing nuts. And in that contest of ideas, the Republican Party is isolating itself. That's why the Democrats are going to win.
Richard, you got to take him seriously. This guy has beat back the union movement in Wisconsin, but where I'm curious as to, I believe he does not have a college degree. And so I don't know Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin. So I don't know how that's going to play.
I'd add on 7 points right there.
Add on 7
I'd add on 7 points right there.
Are you serious?
I'm absolutely,
I don't know
I'm
that
absolutely
a college
serious about
degree
that.
is...
Yeah, you got. I mean, you add on 7 points right there.
Well, how about
the average American says he's a regular guy.
But how about no college degree, but still trying to cut funding to the University of Wisconsin?
People don't trust the Northeast. You know, excuse me, Richard, but the Harvard, the Ivy League types that come out there and know better than the average person. Walker comes across like the average guy.
Can't campaign as an education president that way.
No, he can't. He can, but he likes education at the local level. But he comes across as a regular
but don't
guy,
you
and
think,
that resonates.
Maybe it's me, but I think the next president, for the 10% out there who haven't already made up their mind, depending who comes out of the primaries, they want competency more than everything else. Less so than they would have 6-7 years ago when they believed in the idea of Obama and the change and everything else with it. They want somebody who can handle the 3 o'clock phone call. They want somebody who's going to make sure we don't go over some other fiscal cliff here. And they want somebody to make some of the tougher decisions that are going to be unavoidable in the next 4 to 8 years. It doesn't have to be the smartest person in the room, but it certainly can't be the dumbest. I think
He's not dumb.
I didn't say he was, but I'm saying regardless of party, Don't you think that's going to matter more now than it did, like I said, 6 years ago?
I think absolutely. I think people are looking for a candidate that stands by his or her principles as well, that exhibits or demonstrates common sense and a good
but
temperament
that implies
for the
to me
office.
somebody who believes. I think principles are even less important now than they were before. People want a little compromise. I think more so than before, and they want stuff done, and they want a grown-up sitting in the big chair.
They don't want to be hoodwinked. I mean, voters feel hoodwinked all the time. They want somebody who is what he says he is or what she says she is.
You know, you guys refuse to acknowledge that there is substance to the ideas that these candidates are going to offer that people are going to pay attention to. You can be a non-hoodwinker, non-college goer, non-Harvard guy, non-Democrat, but if you stand for economic policies that benefit the rich, a cut in aid to higher ed, anti-gay rights, people are going to notice eventually.
All right.
This is the guy who's governor of arguably the most liberal state in the country.
No.
One of them, where the union
I'd
movement
say
started.
Madison.
And,
I don't know about the whole state,
and
but
he's been
okay.
elected twice.
All right, now, when we come
3
back,
times.
we're going to get a little closer to home, specifically the George Washington Bridge. David Wildstein, he is set to plead guilty, reportedly, for his role in the Bridgegate scandal as early as tomorrow. He a close ally of Chris Christie. We're going to ask the table how badly this thing may spin out beyond Mr. Wildstein. Stay with us.